Welcome to IT409. I'm NikhilaT, Bhuvan, Assistant Professor, Department of IT, Rajagiri School of Engineering and Technology. I'm here to handle web application development for IT students of Semester 7. In this lecture, we are going to deal with part 2 of Module 1, which deals with servlets. Servlet technology is used to create a dynamic web application. A dynamic web page is the one which has the capability to change the content according to the time or depending upon the request received by the client. Servlets are the Java programs that run on the Java-enabled web servers or web application servers. They are used to handle the request obtained from the client, process the request, and provide response based upon the client request. The benefits of servlets are listed below. It provides better performance because it creates thread for each request. Portability because it uses Java languages. Robust because the servlets are managed by Java virtual machine. They are secure because of the use of the Java programming language, and servlets can be deployed into distributed server environment. Servlets are the platform and server independent. Servlets are easy to develop and follow a standard API. Servlets are extensible, and a servlet is a server resource providing access to other resources like EJB, JSP, JDBC, etc. CGI common gateway interfaces were used prior to servlets. CGI technology enables the web server to call an external program and pass HTTP request information to the external program to process the request. For each request, it starts a new process. The performance and scalability are big problems because each request to the server which executes a CGI script is answered in a separate process by a separate instance of CGI program. This type of execution has high overhead and requires significant server resources. There are many disadvantages associated with CGI. If the number of clients increases, it takes more time for sending responses. For each request, it starts a process, and web server is limited to start processes. It uses platform-dependent languages like C, C++, Perl, etc. HTTP acts as a backbone for any client-server communication. The HTTP protocol is connectionless. After the server responds to the client's request, the connection between the client and the server is dropped. It is also called as a stateless protocol. The client makes a request, the server responds, and the connection is done. HTTP operates over TCP/IP connection. The browser sends a request to the web server in the form of a request method, uniform resource identifier, and protocol version. This will be followed by the message containing request modifiers, client information, and possible body content. An example of an HTTP version 1.1 request is given in the slide. Some commonly used HTTP methods are given in the slide along with its explanation. The web server responds with a status line, one or more response headers, a blank line, and optimally the document or other data. The status line, which is also referred to as the response line, consists of the server protocol and a status code. The status code indicates the success or the failure of the client request. The status codes are divided into different categories as given in the slide. The server first sends a line of text that indicates the HTTP version, followed by a numeric code and a phrase describing the status of the transaction. For example, HTTP slash 1.1 200 OK indicates success, whereas HTTP slash 1.1 404 not found informs the client that the web server could not locate the requested resource. A sample HTTP response header is given in the slide. The line stating content type, that is text or HTML, tells the browser that the data that follows should be interpreted as HTML or a web text. Servlet is a web component managed by a container that generates dynamic contents. The term servlet engine has been replaced by servlet container. The servlets interact with web clients via request-response model that is implemented by the servlet container. A servlet container can be run as a standalone or embedded into a full web server. The servlet engine is one which actually helps web server communicate with the servlets. Basically, servlets lies within this web containers or the servlet engine. The web container is responsible for invoking methods on servlets. When request comes from this client, then the web server will send the request to the web container or the servlet engine. The servlet engine knows which servlet to call, which servlet can serve the request of the client, and it knows what method to call the servlet to get the information. The role of the web container or the servlet container is given in this slide. The first one is the communication support that it provides between the web server, client and the servlet. Second one is the lifecycle management using init, service and destroy methods. Third is the multi-threading support. Fourth is the security. As client cannot directly talk to the servlet, it is only provided through the web containers. And the fifth one is the JSP support. There are two main packages providing interfaces and classes for writing the servlet in Java. They are javax.servlet and javax.servlet.http. So servlet can also be defined as a class that extends the capabilities of the servers and responds to the incoming request. All servlets must implement the servlet interface, which defines the lifecycle methods like init, service, and destroy. When implementing a generic service, we can use generic servlet classes, and HTTP classes provides methods such as doGet, doPost for handling the HTTP specific services. There are two main types of classes that implement the servlet interface: javax.servlet.generic servlet and javax.servlet.http servlet. The generic servlet is used to implement the generic classes, and the HTTP servlet classes have built-in support for the HTTP protocols. Here is a list of interfaces in javax.servlet package. The first five, that is a servlet, servlet request, servlet response, request dispatcher, and servlet config, are most frequently used interfaces in this package. Here is a list of classes which are there in javax.servlet package, and the first three are most commonly used classes in most of the servlet not most of the servlet program. In all the servlet program you can find these three classes, that is generic servlet, servlet input stream, servlet output stream, etc. Here comes the list of interfaces in javax.servlet.http package. And the first two, HTTP servlet request and HTTP servlet response, is the most frequently used interface because all the servlets depends upon the HTTP protocol. This is the list of classes in javax.servlet.http package. The javax.servlet package specifies two exception classes, the javax.servlet.servlet exception and javax.servlet.unavailable exception. The servlet requires a specific structure and it must contain the following three methods: init method, service method, and destroy method. The init method initializes the servlet and allocates memory for the process. The service method, which may also be specified as a doGet method, doPost method, doPut, doDelete method, etc., processes the HTTP request and typically provides a response that is sent to the client's browser. Destroy method may save data to a log file and frees up resources that were used by the servlet. The servlet container invokes the servlet service method, passing the HTTP servlet request and HTTP servlet response objects. These are Java classes from the Java Servlet API, which developers use to interact with HTTP requests and responses. Depending on the HTTP transfer method, the service method routes a request to another method. HTTP GET requests are routed to the doGet method, and HTTP POST requests are routed to the doPost method. The HTML forms are a means of collecting information by providing a way to prompt the user for information and then carry out actions based on the input. To create a form, you use the tag form element to enclose HTML control and other elements. The form element specifies which action to take when the user provides the information. There are two main methods available to the form to send information to the server: get and post. The attribute specifies how the information will be sent. The difference between the two has to do with the way the information is sent to the server. The get method is used if you want to send the information via browser or the URL. With post, the information is not sent by URL. The sending is invisible to the site visitor. The get method is called with the help of doGet method, which accepts two arguments. The first parameter is an HTTP servlet request object that provides the input stream enabling servlets to read the client request. The second parameter is an HTTP response object that provides an output stream enabling servlets to write a response back to the client. The web container maintains the lifecycle of a servlet instance. Let's see the lifecycle of the servlet. The servlet class is loaded, servlet instance is created, init method is invoked, service method is invoked, and destroy method is invoked. After initialization, the container invokes the service method, passing a request and response object. The main purpose of the service method is to get information from the HTTP request, perform the task needed to answer this request, locate the needed information, pose a response back to that information. The servlet container stops a servlet by invoking the destroy method of the servlet interface. You override the destroy method to release any resources previously allocated in the init. The model is a data representation of the real-world class that you want to create an interface on. For web application, the model is a component that exposes the business logic for a particular web application. The view implements a visual view of a model. The controller receives all input events from the user. It is a class that deals with the physical input devices and translates those signals into messages to the appropriate view. The advantage of an MVC are the navigation control is centralized, easy to maintain the large application, easy to extend and easy to test. Here we have come to an end of Module 1 of Web Application Development. In this lecture, we have dealt with Servlet. What are Servlets? How is it being implemented? What are the different APIs in Java that support Servlet? The Servlet lifecycle methods, etc. Thank you for listening.